What's up, everybody, and welcome back for another solo mining episode. We're going to be doing quite a little bit of Mackinaw mining today, as usual, and just continually build out the stockpile that we're kind of preparing to send out to Null. Now, the reason we haven't really sent anything out yet is one, we don't really need anything out there yet, because a lot of the things that we will be building are just finishing up in research, and also when it comes into terms of like logistics, a lot of freight services will have a minimum reward. They'll also have a cost per M3 and things like that. So in the case of my situation, we have if it doesn't matter how much you actually ship out. If you ship out 80,000 cubic meters, you're going to pay the minimum, that minimum payment pretty much stays the same up until the point where it scales. At a certain cubic meter, it will start, the base cost reward will start to scale. So to get more bang for the buck, we need to really like come up to that line. So for me, getting up to like 125,000 cubic meters, if I can do that in compressed ore, that means I can ship 125,000 cubic meters for the same reward as if I shipped 50,000 cubic meters. So that's why a lot of time it takes a while to kind of build the export out for nullsec. But also in terms of like what I'm kind of targeting to for export is you want to kind of get more, you want to get the most you can out of like that stuff you're sending out. So going after rich plag and dense feldspar and things like that, the tier 3s of the ore, those give you more per refine than the regular or the tier 2 or the regular variants. So when I can, I'll try to grab and prioritize the tier 3s and then the tier 2s, and then if there's really nothing left, then I'll just grab the tier 1s, and that's just something to kind of keep in mind. Now, with the amount of volume we have to send out to nullsec, we can't really be too picky because it does take a long time with a single Mackinaw to mine up to like 125,000 cubic meters, and we haven't really been doing too well with coming out here and doing a bunch of mining every day. There's been a lot of focus for me on the PI side, and also the doing reactions and just kind of keeping manufacturing jobs going, because we do have a lot of raw resources out there and all that we have to like kind of keep processing to potentially get some income while we're waiting. But that's really kind of like what the import-export situation is looking like right now, and we're doing pretty well with our resources here in HiSec. Well, we're not burning crystals very fast, so we haven't had to resupply at all from JITA, and a lot of that has to do with the volume of mining that we're doing. I think we picked up the pace and did 10 or 20 trips out with the Mackinaw a day, then we'd probably start to see a little bit more wear and tear on those crystals. But I think a big thing I want to talk about today in this episode is just kind of like just mining in general, just like, and also just kind of like EVE in general, in terms of kind of keeping yourself engaged and not really backing yourself into a corner, so to speak. Obviously, I'll be leaning on a lot of my experiences to kind of give perspective to my points on this. And one of the big things I was thinking about the other day is back whenever I started playing EVE and I joined the corporation, my daily routine was essentially just logging in, undocking, turning mining lasers on, and we'd mine for like 6 hours or so. But the interesting thing too is after like the corp mining op was over, I really had no idea what to do after that point. And in most cases, I would just undock again and go mine without boost. A lot of this led to me getting an alt as a hauler, and then that alt eventually became a Hulk pilot, and my main became an Orca pilot, because the corporation wasn't really interested in teaching us any other parts of the game. And I think a lot of that is still true today for a lot of people in HiSec and a lot of people in nullsec too. It's like the corporation doesn't really want you to learn too much about the game, especially in areas that they don't really operate, because they definitely don't want to like lose your focus, like, and you want to go off and do other things, right? And I've run a corporation before. I've had to do the whole recruiting process, and I can tell you it's probably not much different than it was back then. But finding good recruits, good, consistent recruits that aren't, like stab you in the back or just decide not to log in anymore, is very difficult. So when people find members that will kind of do the things that their corporation is interested in, then it's very tempting to just kind of keep those people like kind of in a vacuum for the most part. I think about a lot of the issues that my corporation had in just like doing simple things like hauling the ore that we mined to Jita. Our corporation would lose haulers all the time on the way to Jita to sell, and in hindsight, honestly, that could have been, those issues are so easy to fix, and all the corporation really had to do was teach the members and introduce the members to combat, and to even just at the very base level, just to like ratting and things like that, and get them into ships that could go along the way and kind of just be a show of force for that export to Jita. But a lot of the reason why I don't think my corporation back then didn't do that was because they didn't really know a lot about the ratting and like the other sides of the game outside of mining, and I just don't think the interest was there, and it wasn't in their best interest to teach their members to do anything other than mine, because they really just needed the members out there with lasers on and putting ore in the Orca, and that's really, beyond that, they really didn't want you doing anything else. This obviously went on for a long time for me, and I was told, like I was explicitly told, that ratting was a waste of time, that the rewards and the loot and everything the bounties were all just a waste of time, and literally the best thing to do in the game was mining. I think that the person that told me that, I think that their perspective was very, very skewed in the fact that like they were probably talking a lot about high-sec ratting, and high-sec ratting is pretty pitiful, but in the more subsequent years that I've been playing, there's a lot of different layers to EVE Online as well. It's like there are times now, well, I'll go out and do high-sec ratting, but not necessarily for the bounties, not necessarily for the loot, but like for the salvage or for whatever the case may be. There's benefits to be had across the board. Now, the one thing that really did change my perspective a lot, and then actually I started the whole like kind of train of thought kind of started well before I went into nullsec, because it was one of those days where we would log in every day, we'd mine for like 5 or 6 hours, and we'd clear like 9 belts, we'd clear the entire system, and then probably the adjacent system depending, but it was one of those days where the mining op was done. I was pretty much almost done with like Oracle training, because I really wanted to just get into something bigger. I was like really looking for ways to expand my gameplay, because logging in every day and just mining, I had been doing that for 3 or 4 months at that point, and it was really starting to get old. So there was one day after a mining op that there was a wormhole in our high-sec system, and I actually went in there because I was just bored. I just wanted to see what was going on, and I didn't tell my corp that I was going in there or whatever. I went in there with like a Corvette or whatever, and just kind of poking around and saw a lot of cool things in there, and actually met somebody in there that was chatting me up and talking with me and everything. And that instance, I see that as like a pivotal moment for me. It was like one of those moments of, whoa, there's like this whole other world out there, and there's this whole other, like, there's all these other gameplay loops that exist, but here I am just mining the same 9 belts every day in a high-sec system. And while I didn't immediately go into like doing a lot of PvE ratting exploration, I definitely started looking at ships and looking at gameplay mechanics in a different light. It was actually very shortly after that I started training into the Dami, a lot of drone boat combat ships, because as a miner we were extremely highly trained in drones, my skill book essentially was a lot of shield skills, a lot of resource processing skills, the mining skills, and uh, just like the Magic 14 and stuff like that. And so I was trying to do my best with what skills I already had, and trying to break into that kind of ratting PvE kind of situation and see how it felt. Now I got my Dami, and I think I was running like a Brutix and a Vexer and stuff beforehand. So I really started to kind of like lean into the drone boat thing, and I ran drone boats for a long time, but I really started to enjoy doing ratting, on the side from the corporation's main focus. They didn't like this at all. But when they found out that I went into the wormhole, because I went into the wormhole and actually mined, I went in there with the Corvette, talked to the dude, whatever, had a pretty good time, and then I came out, and then I went back in with a Procure, went to one of the Anoms, and I was pulling out like a lot of rare or that our corporation normally didn't see in buybacks. So that's what kind of gave me away, was when I submitted a buyback, and it had like all this abyssal ore, and this like stuff that was found in low sec. And so the corporation leader asked me, he's like, "Where were you? What were you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I went to a wormhole, and I found more ore that wasn't Feldspar, Pyro, Plag, and Scordite, and been doing rat sites." And to this point, his whole demeanor for me kind of changed. He started to kind of pull away from me a lot. I mean, I was basically like number two at that point in the corporation, kind of the right hand, and I was involved in a lot of talks with like future planning and kind of what the corp's goals were. It was after that point that I really started to feel the cold shoulder for the most part, because I think he knew that I had gotten a taste of what was the other things to do in Eve, and that I look back on that situation as being like really kind of shitty. Like I just wanted to go out there and do something different, but then now I'm getting like treated differently because I did something that the corporation either didn't approve of or didn't recommend at all. And at that point, I started just keeping everything that I did outside the mining ops to myself for the most part. Even though I was really excited about the things I was doing, like going into wormholes and doing ratting and doing exploration, I didn't really have anybody to share it with, because I would just get more ostracized from that mining corporation than I already had. So my way to fix this was like to start pushing. I started pushing really heavy for the corporation to move to Null, to start doing mining and moon mining out there, and I just kind of had to disguise my motivations in terms of industry. But what I really wanted to do is I wanted to get out to Null. I wanted to learn how to live in Null. I wanted to be able to do the rat sites out there, the exploration sites out there. But the only vehicle of persuasion that I had at that time was basically mining. And we did end up going out to Null. We didn't end up, going and doing Argnor Bistot, the Anom mining, moon mining, and it was all well and good. And then I discovered Mercoxis, and so at that point, the mining ops went from like in high sec that we would do like 5 or 6 hours, and null sec we were in a pretty busy area, so we were lucky if we got like an hour, 2 hours before we really started having a lot of people kind of watching our system and stuff like that. But the amount of ISK I would make on a mining op up to that point was as to be expected. It was kind of like I had no basis of context. And what I started to do in nullsec was, outside of the mining ops, I started mining Mercoxis, and I saw the value in the morphite and everything. And like I could go out there with like my skiff at the time and go and mine Mercoxis, mine every Mercoxis rock in the whole system, refine it, and make more on that by selling that to the alliance or the corporation than I would make in like a week or more from doing mining ops. And that was like the second phase of my shift away from, I guess you could call it, organized corp mining, because I realized that there was like there was revenue and income streams that didn't involve massive fleets. And I don't actually mind being on grid with a bunch of different miners. It's actually preferred in nullsec because the more targets that are on field, if somebody comes in, like, the chances of you being primaried is significantly lower. If you're out there by yourself, then yeah, you're the only target, so you're gonna get primaried. So there's some protection in numbers in that sense, but there's also just like, if a system is known to being a really big fleet mining system, then it gets watched. It gets put on a watch list for people who like to hunt miners. And a lot of like I just started kind of separating myself from big fleet organized stuff like that because I wanted to kind of fly under the radar. And it's always been kind of like my play style, no matter what I kind of play. Not even Eve, but I always kind of like the covert style of gameplay. So like in WoW, I'd play like a rogue or just like stuff like that, and I really enjoyed just being able to play solo and be able to like go out and make a decent amount of ISK without relying on anybody. Because even back then, that corporation, they would basically operate from like reset up to like 6 hours after reset or so. And then for me, my playtime was a lot more than that. So after about the first 6 hours of the day, like I had nothing else to do if I wanted to continue doing what the corp wanted. Which kind of sucked. Is like they knew the people in the corporation were playing a lot longer than what the corp leader or the corp executives, I guess you could say, were playing. So there started becoming a lot of dictation as far as like, hey, this is what we need done. You need to mine this and this and this for buyback. And you started to see a lot more goals outside of the actual like mining. So they were trying to like essentially control what we were doing, even though we weren't doing corp stuff. And like I didn't really want to do that. Like I would put in my time doing the corp stuff in the morning, and then the rest of the time I saw fit to do whatever I kind of wanted to do, which was also kind of a shunned thing as well, because you're in a mining corporation and you do the mining, you do all the inventory stuff, you check all the boxes, and then you're out there ratting, and that pisses a lot of people off because then they look at you like, okay, well, it's only a matter of time before this guy is just going to go off and become like a PvPer, or like a PvEer and not be a non-miner, which is ridiculous and everything. And this drama kind of continued for a while until a non-mining was just, the value of Alchner Bistot was just so extremely low that we really started leaning a lot into moon mining. The Alliance wanted to do a lot of Alliance level manufacturing in terms of more complex things like battleships and stuff like that. So we were basically tasked as the main mining corp of the Alliance to go out to a completely different area and start doing moon mining. And we're talking like 27 active moons across several different systems. And we're talking like showing up, not like before it was like, oh, you log into your system in null or your system in high sec, and in dock you go mine with the corp. And now it was like there's a whole other level of like logistics involved. So it's like, okay, we're showing up, we're gonna mine this moon, and right after the op, we would essentially have to start packing it in and going to the next system. And it was just that every day. It was like, mine this moon and then move all your bullshit, and then mine this other moon and move all your bullshit again. And it's like over and over and over. That really, put a lot of stress, not just on our corporation, but like a lot of the corporations that were asked to participate in this operation. And there was also an issue of just getting paid for those ops. There was a lot, money started going missing, or the payouts would start getting really low for the miners. And we're talking about people who were committing like 7 to 8 hulks to the field, and putting a significant amount of risk ISK wise on the field, and they weren't even able to like really make it worth their while. But complaining about the actual payout was also shunned as well, because it's like, well, this is something that we're doing as an alliance. But it's like, if you can't cover my operational costs, or if you can't cover the risk that I'm putting out, then there's no point in me even like having these assets out here, or even taking these taking these mining ops, and this was like kind of the catalyst of the moment where everything kind of like started to kind of fall apart, and I think it opened up a lot of people's eyes to kind of like how I guess mid to high level mining corps kind of run. If you don't keep an eye on the bottom line, you don't keep an eye on like how much you're actually getting paid for what you're putting in, because it's very easy to just kind of go out there and mine and socialize, and then accept whatever they give you for your time. But for me, since I already started dipping into like other areas of the game, and I had an idea of how much I could make just by myself without dealing with all this drama, really kind of put it in perspective for me. And it was probably several months into this moon mining thing that I finally took like the final hiatus, and away from the game, and I kind of just pulled everything out, put all my tunes in Jita, and I think that hiatus was actually like 3 months. I was gone from the game for like 3 months, and I was just kind of sitting there thinking like, what do I really want? I mean, I enjoy Eve, but I don't enjoy the drama, and I kind of went through the same thing with WoW and everything, with like rating and things. It's like when you enjoy something, but you feel like the only way to progress and to min-max is to like, deal with the drama, and it sucks. And that's really kind of the moment when I started just strictly focusing on solo stuff. It's like, if I can't do it by myself, then I'm not going to do it, because at least then I have control over what I'm doing. And from then to now, that's just as much true now as it was back then. So, and the big thing I want to talk about today is mainly like the variety, giving yourself the variety, training yourself into different areas of the game, even though you might not ever have to use those skills. So, understanding how PvP works, because even as a miner, you need to like be able to defend yourself. If you have people come in the system and just want to hang out and keep you from undocking, like you need to be able to like jump into PvP ships and go brawl with them and do stuff, and which is kind of just helps everything kind of keeps everything kind of moving, but also just kind of breaking the monotony. And a lot of the reasons I took a lot of hiatuses in Eve while being strictly a miner in a mining corporation was just that. It was like there was no variety for me. I would go like a month or two of just doing the same thing every single day until I just got to a breaking point. It wasn't until I started getting into high level ratting, we're talking like running Marauders and doing 7 of 10, 8 of 10, 10 of 10s, and just doing all the regular combat SIGs and stuff like that, and doing data relic sites and getting into manufacturing and all kinds of different aspects, and doing security missions in high sec. Until I gave myself all of these different things I could do, the burnout would just happen pretty much by like clockwork. And whenever I started actually doing high level ratting, I probably didn't touch mining for like several months. I was got really into the whole mining or the whole ratting thing, and just exploring kind of like what that gameplay loop was like. And then once I started learning all these different aspects of the game, I was able to step back and look at the game as a whole, and figure out how everything kind of like feeds into each other. And logging in at that point was like, what do I feel like doing, right? Do I feel like going out and scanning these SIGs and doing data relics, or do I feel like going out and ratting, or do I feel like going out mining, or just sitting here doing manufacturing and PI? So I'm grateful for a lot of the experiences that I did have in the first like 9 months to year of playing Eve. I think that if I hadn't gone through a lot of those drama-filled situations, I think that I'd probably be stuck in some sort of version of that situation. So there's a lot. I guess the main point I want to make is like, if you're new to mining and you're enjoying it, you will enjoy it, but you will get burnt out as well. But like, give yourself some other options too. You also have a lot more things these days to worry about as a miner, as opposed to what we did like 3 years ago. We never checked for pirate strongholds because they just weren't really a thing. The scarce, they just didn't happen all that often. And so we didn't really have to worry about that. Like now you have to kind of like check your system every day to make sure a pirate stronghold's not there. If it is, you have to either like, coordinate to get it taken care of, or go mine somewhere else. And also just like even in nullsec for mining, right? The frequency of rat carriers, rat dreads, and those things showing up to the mining grid, those are things you got to be prepared for, and those are things that being an expert miner, a max, Hulk pilot is not going to help you. Like, and that's what makes being like a max marauder pilot or being able to fly a dread and as a miner is worth it, because the fact that there are PvE elements that are specifically there are PvE mechanics that are specifically put in to put pressure on miners. So combat skills and scanning skills, all that stuff is still very, very important. And even beyond just like normal mining skills, just like hauling skills are super important. I think everybody can probably think of a time when they trained to a ship that they kind of regret training into and don't really use anymore. But the Blockade Runner is probably by far one of the best ships that that everybody should be training into, because it's useful no matter if you're a PvPer or you're doing ratting or you're doing mining. Like, Blockade Runners are by far one of those things you'll never regret training into. I kind of felt the same way when it came to interceptors back in the day. I trained interceptors for travel and things, and that was one of those ships back then that I was like, I don't regret getting into this. And that was actually before I got into Blockade Runner by suggestion. But since the interceptor kind of lost its like passive bubble immunity, I don't think I've used one since, honestly. Like, everything is just shuttles. But after I trained into like the interceptor, just to like move stuff around, like implants or anything really low, just getting that Blockade Runner. The second I trained into the crane was just a game changer. And I think if I had to give any advice to anybody, as far as one single thing that could just improve their gameplay, is get that Blockade Runner. Because, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're a ratter, when you're taking stuff back to JITA. I use my crane with like expanded cargo hold, so I can carry like 12,000 cubic meters. And I've flown out of nullsec with that thing full of faction mods and overseer effects and stuff like that, and just more fight and nanite repair pace, and kind of took logistics into my own hands. Didn't have to wait for like jump raider services to hit JITA or pay a certain amount. Because like, you could stack a lot with like nanite repair pace and more fight and things like that. You can stack a lot of value in that 12,000 cubic meter. So like, I definitely highly recommend that if you're not, get somebody or everybody. I train everybody into a Blockade Runner, and I go Caldari just because I like the look of the ship and everything. But whatever faction you're kind of you kind of prefer, I definitely recommend kind of going into that. But I think that, like, I guess if I look back and like kind of looked at everything in terms of like my how I kind of like operated in E from like the beginning to now, it's like when I first started playing, I was still learning the game. I did like a lot of the missions back then, the agent stuff. Obviously, like the career program didn't exist back then. It took maybe like a day and a half to do like all of the career agents then, and it was weird too, because like there was no new player experience back then. So for me, I thought, well, these missions, I can just run these missions and they'll just kind of keep going for a good amount of time. And once I finished all those agent missions, I was like, is that it? It was at that point I noticed that I recognized the game was very much a sandbox. And I got to the point where I was doing a lot of like agent missions for mining and security and distribution. So I kind of had stuff everywhere. So it wasn't necessarily like, I didn't really come into EVE as like a strictly like interested in mining. It did probably out of everything look the most entertaining and appealing. But even before I got into a mining corporation, I definitely was like, kind of messing around with everything. But getting into that mining corporation, I remember the line of thought for me was like, I want to be able to learn more about this game at a fast pace. So the only way I can do that is by getting into a corporation and kind of just like picking people's brains, which is exactly what I did. I got into that corporation and started learning stuff, and then started kind of breaking away eventually. It didn't take very long either. Pretty much a month after joining that mining corporation, I had absorbed and learned everything that they really had the ability to teach. And that kind of caused me to go off and start branching off and do my own thing. And I really did, in terms of just mining in general, I really did become like a more of a capitalist after I kind of had figured out the basics. And like we're talking about the basics of like, ship fitting and kind of like how people were doing things and the different ore types and stuff like that. Like our corporation wouldn't go, when I got to them, they would basically just go and mine the belts. And this was during the invasion too, so that we had trig and Indicom staging places in HiSec. So I did manage to get them to go out and start doing Rackamine mining and stuff like that. But just, and this was also a time where there was still like Omber and stuff like that, Omber and, or anomalies in HiSec. So even I would start capitalizing on that stuff. I'd start going off and after mining ops, I'd go out and mine an entire anom of Omber and make a pretty good killing on that stuff. But I can also remember a really interesting time where our corporation didn't really, the leaders of our corporation didn't really follow like patch notes, or they didn't really follow the stuff that was going on at like the development level either. So even though like the launcher would show like current patch notes or what's up and coming, they never really looked at that stuff. So once invasion kind of ended, the whole trig and Indicom thing like ended, we knew that they were going to start removing what I call potato ore, but like the abyssal ore out of at a HiSec. So all those sites were going to start disappearing and not spawning anymore. I took it upon myself for like 3 days prior to them removing that stuff. I went out there and just mined as much talassonite or whatever it's called, and Rackamine and stuff like that I could find in HiSec. I just stacked it, and I was putting in buy orders, because the price had already started to go up because people were basically the price was going up because people were kind of like not really mining it anymore, but also people were trying to acquire it easily, so that they kind of had access to it and they didn't really have to go like to Poshpin and stuff. We didn't really know where it was going at the time, but like eventually, obviously it goes back to Poshpin. So the price kind of skyrocketed with that stuff. And my corporation leader didn't know why. He just thought that, the ore was doing really, really well. So the last day before the stuff got, we're literally, I'm mining it. And then after the next reset is when like all the ore was going to like basically not be in existence anymore, essentially. I mined like 10 bill worth of that stuff, and I was putting it basically every time I got to 1 billion value, I was just putting in a buy order, and I put in like 5 or 6 or buy orders at a time, and just like I got all that stuff. And by his rules of buybacks in the corporation, once that buyback was submitted, that price was locked in because we used e-appraisal and stuff like that. It took several days before like the price really dropped, but he had to honor all that ore. I made a killing on that as well, but that was kind of a lesson. That was a hard lesson to learn in terms of like not really knowing what's going on at the development level, because even though he bought all this, this abyssal ore from me, he could melt it down obviously and do. But at that point, we weren't even doing manufacturing anymore. But what he was doing was he was actually just like buying it from us at a certain rate, and then he was just selling it to somebody else at a different rate. Because we used to do manufacturing before we moved further into Minimatar space. We would do like procure. When we had our own structures and stuff like that, we would do procure and coveter construction, because we had access to that Rackamine and stuff like that, and we didn't really have to go into low-sec or null-sec to kind of build those mining ships. But once the structure core thing came out, he essentially panicked and got rid of all our structures, got us into an alliance, and we were sitting in another HiSec system, basically being told what to do. Like, how you go mine we only want trit. We need a billion trit. Get on it. Stuff like that. So I actually enjoyed the fact that I was able to capitalize on that abyssal ore before it went out of HiSec, even though it really kind of did set the corporation back. But also at that point, the buyback rate was so low. I want to say we were like a 50% of JITA for our buyback because of just money management in that corporation and things like that, which at that point I didn't really care. I was already kind of like looking at doing things on my own anyway. That kind of the buyback percentage actually only got worse when I got to nullsec. And what's interesting is like I was getting paid my rate because I was one of the only people that went with him to nullsec to do mining out there. A lot of the other people who weren't really ready to go stayed in high sec. So if you stayed in high sec, you were actually getting more from your buybacks than I was in nullsec because he was trying to recoup the cost of like skilling into like a Rorqual and stuff like that. And I already had Rorqual training. By the time we got ready to move to null, I told him, I was like, hey, my Rorqual training is complete. We can go out there, I can run the Rorqual, and we can do stuff. And he basically told me that he was the corp leader and he was going to be the one running the Rorqual, and injected all the skills into Rorqual like pretty much overnight. And then my buyback percentage went down to what I can only assume helped recoup the cost of all those injectors and that hull and all that stuff, which kind of sucked because like I was ready to go. I had all the skills. He didn't need to like do all that injecting. I could have just ran the Rorqual myself, but it was like kind of a shot to the ego, I guess it were. But now here we are, hanging out and doing like a little bit of like high sec mining and then doing what we need to do in nullsec. And it's a good spot. I've gotten to a good spot in recent years, and the ability to just do kind of whatever I want to do or feel like doing without really any drama is very nice, and something I worked really hard to try to get to. And I know a lot of people out there watching this are probably stuck in some real shitty corporation or alliance situations, and I just want to be able to like give people like inspiration that it doesn't have to be drama. Every time you log into any game that you have to play with other people, you don't have to be subjecting yourself to egos and to stigmas and to all this other crazy shit. There is people out there that are chill. There are things, ways to progress in everything without having to deal with complexes and people's own personal prejudices and things like that. So it just takes a little bit of work to find, because the people I tend to see that like the people who don't like drama tend to don't advertise what their corporation too often, because they don't really want the more you kind of put yourself in like the public light as far as recruitment, the more kind of bad apples you tend to like pull from the tree. So it's once you find a good spot, consider yourself lucky. And that's what's crazy just about with anything, like you really don't know how bad you have it until you get something that's really really good. It's like just like for me, it's like without all these experiences that I had to go through, I wouldn't be valuing what I have now as highly. I think the goal moving in the next near future, I guess, is once we get this export that we're working on right now in high sec, I think there'll be enough minerals to last us in manufacturing for quite some time. I'll probably actually cover a lot of null sec mining in this series. We'll go out and do some ArcNor, we'll do some BISDOT, and kind of touch a little bit more on how the gameplay loop for nullsec mining is kind of different than what it is here in high sec. High sec is pretty chill. There are more things to worry about in terms of rats and things like that in null. So I do want to kind of showcase that a little bit, and also that'll give us a good opportunity to stack up some Zydrine and stuff like that. One of the things that we are going to be looking at putting together here manufacturing wise is going to be mobile tractor units. So we already need like the normal minerals for building the actual Tech 1 tractor beams that go into that, and then we also just need like a stockpile of Zydrine to go into the actual MTUs as well. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm going to try to kind of do as much of this high seg mining as I can in the next week or so to try to really push my volume up to where it makes sense for me to kind of get all this stuff moved out. I'll try to do as many of these episodes as possible, and just kind of like keep you guys kind of updated on how that's all progressing and everything. But this week I definitely want to like try to cover a lot of things in terms of skills and like just different. Share my perspective on things that I think matter in the game in terms of like what you should be using or what skills you should be going into to benefit whatever you're trying to do. Like as far as mining goes, mining skills are they wear many hats. It's not necessarily like the skills that directly increase your yield, but there's a lot of different aspects of the game that kind of play into being a successful miner, and that can be like hauling, getting into industrial hauler ships, or increasing your defensiveness through tank skills, or increasing your offense through drone skills. In the Magic 14, like you look on the channel, there's a Magic 14 video. Like everybody should be focusing on those 14 skills just to make absolutely anything that you can fly any better. So I'm hoping to go into a lot more of that stuff in detail. So if you are somebody who's getting into mining, or you're a new player who's interested in mining, this series can point you in the right direction. Nothing I say is like law. Nothing I say is like this is meta, this is what you need to do as a miner. It's just I'm going to offer all of my my experience and my perspective on things, and then you just kind of take that information, you can dissect it and then decide what applies to your situation or whatever. And just like always, if you have questions about anything, even if you think it might be obscure, there's no such thing as dumb questions. Let me know in the comments, and on episodes I'll try to address as many of those as possible. That does also give me the opportunity to address some things that I might overlook, because like a lot of things in life, whenever you get to a certain point of I guess expertise in a certain area, you really kind of do start to lose the perspective of what it felt like to be coming in as a new player, or a new person to a certain thing. So I think a lot of that has to do with like when you start doing something, when you like if you start mining and you're like a year or 2 years or 3 years into mining, you forget kind of what things confused you when you got into it. So your questions in the comments really do help me kind of try to cover all the bases, because a lot of the times I don't know what it feels like to and especially like Eve is a completely different game now, coming in fresh as a miner as opposed to like 3 years ago. So I really do appreciate all the comments. I also appreciate all of the support and everything you guys have given for this series. It is a series that I really love running, and I hope to do a lot more of these in the future. I think for me, a lot of it is just about like not trying to sound like a broken record for the most part. So a lot of the times in between these episodes, I'm trying to think of ways to think of things that I can share, or experiences that I can share that kind of help towards entertaining but also educating in terms of solo engagement. And that's a big reason why I actually separated the nullsec stuff from this solo mining stuff, because there's a lot of technical stuff that goes on with the manufacturing in nullsec, which I think warrants its own like series. This series is more or less chill mining and just kind of talking podcast style about different perspectives and experiences, and that's been kind of like the goal for me and what I've been really wanting to kind of to share and everything. So thank you for watching. If you feel like supporting the channel, consider becoming a member. If you haven't used the a reference code before in Eve, hit that link in the description and sign in, or create a new account. That'll get you 1,000,000 skill points and all that. That also helps the channel as well. But hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.